Well, I can remember talking to Brandon for the first time, and he said that the blanket was the hardest he was ever on. And I think that has to be remembered as significant too, as he had been in escapee and he'd been around the block a bit. As regarding Sans never got depressed. He was always up on top and all that there. So, the crack would have been 90, but as you can imagine, it was on from 76 to blanket protest. And honestly, it never really looked like we were going to get anything. Even certainly after the first hunger strike, it did look like they weren't going to give in. And when the sort of second hunger strike began, I can remember Son saying there'd be no 11th-hour decision with him. Now, you have to remember in all of this here that in the situation we were in, it was hectic. It's hard to explain in them certain, but there was still what you would call the morale, I suppose, was high enough. After Son's died, I remember Tony Armstrong saying to me he died on that day. I actually had him down the street and he bought my book. Now, that was May 1981, 5th of May 1981. Right, there was a continuous hunger strike right up until Michael Devine died, and all hunger strikers like Liam McCloskey, who was on the big hunger strike, and all people. Probably you don't hear as much been mentioned about them, or probably died maybe through other circumstances. And so it is a period of history, I suppose, that will be remembered, probably, I would say, without exaggeration, along with the bombing. But incidentally, it has been sort of probably heavily politicized, and the underbelly and what happened actually and all that there, like all history, the powerful sort of write the history of it. In the context of Ireland, okay, it did have Sinn Féin, but it didn't really, what I would say, put them in a really strong bargaining position, because obviously you only have to look at Scotch State, the Union Jack, the thing, we didn't put the Brits out of Ireland, no way. That didn't happen. As Cusa illustrated in the book, we thought we would put them into Belfast Lock. That didn't happen. And there had been martyrs for Ireland before.
What about Bobby? You're in the cell next to him.
Yeah.
You, Darky Hughes. Was there any just like crack between you boys?
Oh, of course there would have been. There would have been a bit of crack and all this here. As I mentioned before, you were never as well off in your life, different sort of cat calls, different other things like that. But I think we all sort of realised that the situation was, it was a serious situation. It was unprecedented. There was never really a collective. There was so many men, so many coming off it. The comradeship, the boys were going off it. Trying to hold the thing together would have been impossible. In hindsight, you could have seen, it wasn't going to end normally, as it never did. And it had been going on. I remember I came off the blanket and I met Darky, and I met him later on in Belfast at a hunger strike thing, and I shook hands with him. Now, that was later on. Now, that was the last time I actually did meet Brendan Hughes. And obviously I read his book and all that there. I was very surprised when I read the book. He seemed very sort of, we got fuck all out of it. Which, I don't think the whole Republican thing rested on our protest, to be honest about it. Because, you only have to look at Irish history and you can see that. Granted, it's got a lot of publicity, blah, 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 and all that there, and was politicized heavily. But as you can see, that, it did end with the guns been handed in 2005. And in my opinion, if you hand in your guns, it's surrender and regrant. And the thing, I thought I was fighting in a Republican war, come lose or draw, but I never really thought that the guns would be handed in, in that context. I thought that was an ignominious ending. In that sense, it was like you were at the carnival and, congratulations, we were thanked and all, and that there. So, I of course, how could it be anywhere else but cynical in that respect? But I don't really hold any bitterness or anything like that, because I know, that a lot of wars are running propaganda, but, you have 500, you go down to Hollywood, there's 500 probably British intelligence working in Hollywood we're still under 10 Downing Street. We're still on the British rule now. That's not a hard Republican line, but you don't have to go to Oxford or any college to sort of learn them things. Nothing has really moved. And as I said in my own book, there'll not be a United Ireland. That's hard for a Republican to I mean, a United Ireland, what does a United Ireland mean? A United Ireland means independence, the same as Jamaica. Independence, the same as a lot of other countries got independence. That there has never been on the table from the only time I can remember. I don't even think it was on the table during the 20s in Collins' time, because they were fooled then into believing sort of, we'll hand it back, or we'll hand a bit of it back, or whatever. As Collins actually said, it's not freedom, but it's a happenstone till freedom. Well, it's a very fucking big stepping stone from here to Galveston, because like everybody knows, you don't have to be Irish to know that. The British soldiers know that. The people that came here, the British government know that. Republicans know that. Loyalists know that. The Irish government, if you want to call them that, or the Dublin government know that. So it's not rocket science. Like it's not rocket science. Like my book just illustrates my story and the way I seen it at the time, where other people would be maybe seen it as different in other stuff. But I think we're living in a fool's paradise, to be honest with you.
Okay, Marcus, one thing I picked up in your book that you said, or Brendan Hughes said, that nobody really knew what was going on outside, what was really going on in the prisons. No one had a clue.
Well, you see, the point about that there, if you're incarcerated and you're in jail, and it's a small country, but it's like everything else. I'm sitting here smoking a fag, having a talk with you. There's a lot of things outside the jail too, So like when you're incarcerated and you're incarcerated under them circumstances, the mind boggles. People have families, wives, children. Anything can happen. There's always a sort of salad phrase that runs through the thing and all that there. Now, I can remember distinctly, it was just when thought the rise of Sinn Féin, or whatever way it was in around that period, the republicanism was going out the window, because from what I could gather was leadership of the nationalist people. Well, in my opinion, the leadership of the nationalist people was already got in the 20s. We would have been a bit belated, and so, I think this was the whole sort of, what you call the swing, politics swing, you know what I mean, a close glance at Republican history sort of tells you that. If you want to call 1798 classical republicanism, if you want to call right on through to the Fenian movement, right on through to 1916, right on through to the 20s, 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, 80s, 90s, 20, 25, where I am sitting here today. Is Ireland free? No way.